Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Super excited for the new episode. We sat down with Pastor Ian Holland. He was actually the pastor of the church where I grew up, First Church in Swampscott. It's a great episode. He talks about his 30-year journey from tech to ultimately becoming a pastor. Clarification, when I referenced not going to church, I meant in a formal capacity, sitting in the pews and whatnot. Anyway, it's a great episode. Learned a lot and got some good sayings and took something out of it. So without further ado, Pastor Ian Holland. All right, Pastor Ian, welcome to the Potter Buchanan Show. How are you today?
I'm well. Good to be here, Potter.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. So I wanted to get into kind of your story and background. Obviously, pastor now at my church, or I actually meant to ask you this. Are you disappointed I haven't been to the First Church in 20 or so, give or take years? How do you feel about that?
That's fine. Each person has their own path. Happy to have people come often or when they need or just to pop home for a while. It's all good.
Yeah, we were there for the sale. Was it the dollar sale recently or
The yard sale
yeah,
or
we were there.
the snow fair, the big snow fair.
Yeah.
Laser.
Yeah, I usually pop in for those and parade the kids around so my mom can go show them off. So
That's
I do try to make it there because
that's right.
she likes to bring them around and introduce them to everybody.
Well, and she does such a huge amount of work in helping to organize that event and also helping in every other event of the church. Your mom is just a cornerstone. And of course, your dad is, with his smile and his charm, Mr. Hospitality and ready, willing to prepare a meal for people with Dario. So they're good
Yeah,
people, Susan and Richard.
yeah. Well, my mom loves to help. She loves the church. And my dad loves to cook. He cooks for people. He's been cooking for people his whole life. Cooks for me every time I come home, or he'll come here and bring me a bag of chicken or some steak. It's always meat because you gotta keep the protein up these days, you know?
Yeah. Food is his love language, and works of help and generosity is your mom's love language.
Yeah, absolutely. So, quick question before we get into it: is sports gambling a sin?
Is sports gambling a sin?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
All right. Check that one off.
So I think, well, let me say, so sports gambling such that it doesn't harm one's lifestyle, or loved ones. Sports gambling as a means of expression of fandom in the moment of, if it doesn't mean a lot, then it's fine. But if it means everything,
Okay.
then it's probably not so good.
So it's the level that the level of importance it takes up in your life.
Right.
I got it.
Does it take a priority over other things? Is it the thing that you have to do at the particular time for a particular team, and then that's the highest priority in your life? Well, if that's the case, then it probably isn't such a good idea.
Okay. All right. Good to know. I was looking for a clean yes or no. I'm going to say no for now, but keep an eye on it is kind of what you're saying. All
Well,
right.
my mom used to say, in all things, moderation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I constantly strive for that goal in all things: food, eating, exercise. I mean, exercise you should do a lot, but like trying to find balance is kind of the ultimate struggle of life, I find.
Yeah. Well, I think that, like gambling and like everything else, is the Old Testament has the rule, don't hold up any false idols. So no false worship of other gods.
Yeah.
You can cheer for the Patriots, but don't worship them. Or
Okay.
you could cheer for a horse, but don't worship the horse. Don't
Yeah.
create any false idols.
Yeah. Tom Brady got close there, but maybe Drake will get that level someday. So, all right. All that aside, so your background, you grew up in Ireland as a Catholic, right?
I did. An Irish Catholic in Cork City, in the southern part of Ireland, and went to high school, primary school, went to college in the hometown of Cork City, University College Cork, and I was there until I left at the age of 20, to work in Germany. So I graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science and mathematics
Yeah.
from Ireland, and worked in software development in Germany for a year.
What
But
was that? What was that like in the 80s? Because that was like, I mean, everybody now is in tech, but you were kind of in tech before it was what it was. I mean, everyone seems to, I used to work at Oracle, like it's the majority of jobs now. What did it look like back then?
Yeah, interestingly, it was 35 computer science majors in my class, and of the 35, probably 29 of them emigrated to Europe. So Ireland was training more software engineers than it needed, and other countries weren't training enough. So there was a movement of skilled people from Ireland into Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, Australia, and so on. And what was it like? So I suppose my first job was programming mainframes, big old IBM
Yeah.
mainframes, and writing mainframe assembler code and job control language. And it was the day where the computer would fill the whole.
Yeah.
But then after I worked there for a year, I returned to Ireland and I did a master's degree in computer science and mathematics. And interestingly, my concentration from a master's degree, or what part of it was AI as it was at the time. So it was like the first wave of an interest in artificial intelligence and expert systems and neural networks and all of that. But, and that was fun for a time, but we just didn't have the compute power.
Yeah.
The computers, either mainframes, minis, or PCs, as they were developing at the time, just didn't have the horsepower, and so there was what we called the AI winter blew across the early wave, and it almost went really, really quiet until the CPU power began to meet the demand of the work that was being thrown at the CPU. So it was interesting. It's interesting now. I built an expert system and a few other things at the time, but they wouldn't hold a candle to what you can get on ChatGPT.
Well, even now, desire to build data centers everywhere, as many as possible to reach that next level. What I think the AG1 is like the goal ultimately. I don't know if it's a great idea, but that seems to be what they want to do. So what were some type of things you could solve for, like back then with AI, or what was the goal of it?
Well, I mean, one kind of system were rule-based systems where you would kind of automate the execution of policies that you could express into form of rules. And you could issue a query and you could say, does this particular query satisfy all of the rules or not? And there was a lot of early learning systems, logic-based systems. When I came to the US in 1987, I actually got a part-time job building an expert system to trade
That's
futures
good.
in commodities.
Yeah.
I think it was pork bellies and something else. There was a guy who was building an expert system in the equivalent of his basement, and he wanted to get an edge on the market. So he attempted to put in a lot of rules oriented around technical trading, not so watching the curves of the trades, watching the patterns of trades over the day or over the week, and then trying to make a decision based off of what do the charts look like. And so I programmed a system to go and kind of look at the previous patterns and then try to predict the next patterns. I'm not too sure he made any money off of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like quants now, or what they try to do now. So he was trading pork belly futures?
It was some commodity like pork bellies
Interesting.
or some other entity. I don't think he cared what the actual commodity was because he was a technical trader,
Yeah.
looking at the patterns, the history, as well as, I suppose, the psychology that goes into trading at the time. So this was like pre day trader boom.
So he didn't go billionaire status on the pork belly
No,
fluctuations.
not as far as I could see.
No, it's not buy low, sell high with pork belly. It's a little more complicated than that. It's good to know. So you got your PhD in computer science, right?
Yeah, at Northeastern University. I was there until 1992 with a concentration in object-oriented software development and software engineering.
And this is around the same time where you kind of started to get into religion, from kind of what you said.
I would say that when I began my PhD, I would have been in the kind of atheist camp. I would have
Yeah.
been not a believer in God. And then at some point later, I decided, well, maybe a little bit of God wouldn't be bad. And so I kind of moved into the agnostic phase. And then I met the woman who is now my wife, and we've been married for 33 years. And so I fell in love. And then you come in contact with the mystery of love, the impossibility of love, the unexpressibility of love. And that kind of opens up an idea of, okay, there's something beyond the material at work here.
Yeah.
And at that time, I had a desire when we decided that we were going to get married, that I wanted to get married in a church. I still wouldn't have admitted to myself that I believed in God at that time, but I believed in getting married in a church.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So that was in 1991. So we kept going to church, but again, it took me a number of years before I would admit to myself that I actually believed in God.
And this is Protestant or Catholic at the time?
This is Protestant. This is the Old
Okay.
South in Boston, a member church of what's the denomination called the United Church of Christ, which would be the Christian left, let's say.
Okay.
Liberal progressive denomination generally. And, I have performed marriages for same gender couples. We're supportive of women's rights and people of all gender identities and sexualities. And we're generally kind of a progressive, inclusive kind of Christian.
That's kind of how I parse it out in my mind. It's kind of like Catholicism's old school fire and brimstone, less tolerant. Protestants more like, we just want you to believe in God. Hey, come to church and hang out and let's all be friends.
Well, there's probably 20,000 or more different Protestant denominations, and within
Yeah.
that huge line, you have the Southern Baptists or independent Bible churches that would be very conservative theologically, and then all the way over to the other side, you'd have United Church of Christ and perhaps Episcopalian. But there's a huge range from people who are quite exclusive to ways of being Christian that are quite inclusive, all underneath the Protestant umbrella.
The Protestant banner. Okay. Yeah. I suppose I should have known that going to Protestant church as a child, but maybe it wasn't
Well, you were just
CCD.
used to this one, probably.
Yeah, it's true. That is true. We didn't do CCD. What did we do? What was I got that
Confirmation.
confirmation. Yeah. Yeah, I studied for that.
Yeah.
Problem
So
is
yeah,
what
you
were
were
you saying?
baptized as a child, and then at the age of 13 or 14, you were confirmed.
Yeah. I remember the confirmation. I remember they had soda there, which is good. I drank a good amount of soda at those. So that was excellent.
And you probably enjoyed the second hour of church.
Yes.
The first hour of church, you hang out in the sanctuary, and the second hour of church, you hang out in the hall and eat
Yeah.
cake, drink
Yeah.
cookies, cookies, and
That
conversation.
Yeah, you just really had to make it through the first hour growing up, before you got kicked downstairs and then got to have some fun.
Yeah.
So you eventually became like VP of engineering. So like you're doing really well. Like you're advancing. That's a great role. That's a big. What was the company?
The company was called Kronos,
Yeah.
Kronos. Since then, they were taken private, and then they merged with another company in Florida. So now the organization is called UKG.
That's big. Somebody dealt with them at Oracle. I don't believe it was our group, but that's big business. And what were you doing for them?
So I was, or for most of my time there, I was the chief architect, the chief software and systems architect. So I
Yeah.
was kind of laying out the roadmap for the products and encouraging other people to uh, write software and develop systems that they hadn't actually done before. So there's somewhat of an evangelistic role to say,
Yeah.
well, we can do that. I know we haven't done it before, but we can do it now. And then I finished as one of the VPs of engineering, responsible for the architecture, the performance, and the database engineering aspects of the software. So a lot of the companies would have been the largest company. Our customers would have been the largest companies in the country. Southwest or Target, Kohl's department stores, Tesco in England. A lot of large hospitals would have used our software for employee management, employee scheduling, nurse scheduling, manufacturing companies. So companies from a couple of hundred employees to many tens of thousands.
And was it like an ERP platform or?
So the equivalent would have been or some aspect of our products would have competed against SAP.
Okay. Yeah.
Or even PeopleSoft at the time. I think Oracle had a bunch of HR related applications in the enterprise.
Well, PeopleSoft we ended up buying, so that was
Right.
under our banner. It still
Okay.
is, or not our anymore, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I It was a very successful time. I had worked for IBM before that in operating systems development and wanted to go from kind of computer science underwear to computer science outerwear.
Yeah,
From I want to be able to describe to my mom and dad, what it is we worked on. And they
yeah.
could understand payroll systems, they could understand benefit systems, they could understand, when somebody clocks in and clocks out, how that human being gets paid and scheduled. So that was fun. So I worked for Kronos for 7.5, nearly 8 years. And it was fun to be part of a very successful company, a very successful engineering organization, successful sales organization. And it was fun to go to these large customers uh, on the sales side to, convince them that we had what it takes to solve their problem. Not so good on the post-sales side when the software didn't quite work the way that they
Yeah.
needed to, or somebody spec'd the system wrong. And so you have to go in and, you know, talk the customer down or their engineering team, their IT managers saying, no, that's all right. It doesn't work today, but we'll sort it out.
Well, those are probably good skills to have in the transition to when you're a pastor, right? I mean, you're kind of building up God and what they can do and have certain beliefs and try to do right. And then maybe your life, why do bad things keep happening to me? And then it's like, so then you kind of got to talk them through that part. So it's kind of similar in that
Yeah.
sense.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of scientists have an appreciation for the mysterious. Also, to have faith in a thing that doesn't yet exist, that you're looking to try to either invent or discover or understand. There's a lot of aspects of working with large teams of people and just getting to know each person's strength on an engineering team, and trying to get them to each do their best within the group, knowing that not everybody is exactly the same and each person is motivated differently. So there's a lot of human management when you're working with large teams of engineers or large teams of any kind of person on a single project. And I found it great to find a person who was doing a particular job and they were doing the job because that's the job they always were doing. And previous managers said, you're really good at this database stuff. Just continue on doing that database engineering stuff. Even though that person may not necessarily have thought it was fun for them, but they just kind
Yeah.
of got stuck in a role. And when I was a manager and an executive, identifying some of those people and kind of trying to understand, okay, what do they really enjoy doing? What were they really good at? And then moving them from a job that they were for a while and moving them to a different location in the company or different department and then seeing them, blossom and succeed. So I suppose it was an aspect of working with people and an appreciation for each person's individual talent, each person's individual motivation, their source of joy. And that's a lot of what we do as pastors is to understand and to listen carefully to people and to understand who they are, try to understand what's happening in their world and how God might be working with them in however they're moving through their life or they're through the challenge or situation that they're facing. So I
Yeah.
think when I was working in technology is when I kind of opened up to, wow, people, they're kind of weird, but they're really wonderful. And, you kind of get an appreciation for like the, the human being as a creator, as a creature created by God, through the work of DNA and, all of the other factors that make us up. But there's no, can you describe where personality comes from?
Mix of both parents. That's where you get your swagger from.
I don't know. There's a contributing factor there,
Yeah.
but we have these individual fingerprints and not just have the individual fingerprints, but there's an individual way that our brain chemistries kind of work. There's an individual way, what foods we like, what music we like, our approach to times of crisis and challenge. I mean, we're very, very individual in so many ways.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You have to find how to tailor someone's personality to either God or a success in their role or in their life. And I think that's a constant thing I think about for myself is like, how do I use what I'm good at to propel? I think a lot of what you see on social media and kind of out there today is you got to be this way. You got to be a hustler. You got to be a grinder. You got to be this or that. It's really like I don't know if people change. I mean, obviously, you went from computer science to pastor, but that doesn't mean you changed. I think it was just harnessing what was in you and finding out what's right for you.
Right, right. So there's an expression from a second century theologian, Irenaeus, who said that the glory of God is a human being fully alive. The glory of God is a human being fully alive. So part of my transition from role to role and company to company and from engineering to church is that this was the path I was led in becoming ever more fully alive myself, right? That like how do we kind of unlock the doors to our own best selves. And that's how I approach and I encourage people in the congregation is to do things that allow them to grow into the human being that they are, not kind of force them down a path or, role that they feel like they have to do or society has decided for them, all of that. So, I mean, one of the aspects of my, belief in the holiness of marriage and of marriage between people of all gender identities is because that's the path for those human beings to become ever more fully alive in the context of their relationship with each other. So if we deny them that, then we're cutting off a whole path of their humanity. And that, I think, is against God's desire for us as human beings. So that's again one focus or key component of my ministry is to not tell people you have to do a thing out of duty or responsibility or obligation or other people's expectations. Just find out, okay, how have you been created by God to do what only you can do uniquely, that gives you joy, that lifts up your humanity, that is true to your path.
It's beautiful. So how does it happen? How do you go from computer science, VP of engineering to becoming a pastor? Like what did something click? Did you look up at the sky? Like what was the final thing that made you make the
Yeah,
move?
yeah. Well, it wasn't convenient, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So we lived when I worked for IBM in Florida, in Boca Raton, Florida. Then we moved with IBM to Austin, Texas. And then when I got the job at Kronos, we moved back to Massachusetts. And when we moved back to Massachusetts, we returned to the Old South Church in Boston as our regular place of worship. And over the years, I participate more and more in the life of the church. And as I did, one person or another would say to me, Ian, have you ever thought about becoming a pastor? And I just blew it off. I was fully engaged in as being a technocrat, as being somebody who was doing very well and very successful in their role. But people would keep on saying it to me over the years, one person after another. And then one time after a meeting on a Tuesday night, I think 2024, one of the associate ministers took me aside and says, Ian, you have to pay attention to what's happening to you.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in.
So that night I went home and I started reading some of these stories, some of these biographies of people who were second career pastors, people who had gone into ministry after having been something else. And that particular night, I probably uttered every single curse word that was in my vocabulary at the time because I had that realization, my goodness, I'm one of them.
Were you trying to get them all out before you had to become a pastor?
I guess I still got a few.
Okay, okay.
I can be an irreverent reverend when I
When you
when,
need to.
when I need to.
Good, good.
So that was the beginning of basically a year of torment where I did feel called to the ministry, but I didn't want to do it.
Interesting.
It made no sense. It made no sense. I just discovered I believed in God, but at that point I had no idea who Jesus was. And so it was a little bit strange to go to seminary to be a Christian minister if I didn't know who Jesus was for me. So that was a bit of a problem,
It's a
but
hurdle.
it's a hurdle. So for the next year, I denied the call, the idea of it for it's just it didn't make sense. It didn't make any rational sense. It surely didn't make any economic sense. It didn't make sense for all of the training and education I had done to that point. But after the year went by, um, I had another revelation, which is I could either do that or I could go crazy. So I chose to go and do that.
That's a
Um,
good juxtaposition there. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. Mental health or not. And during that time, I had lost the taste for software development. I was still good at it. I was still accomplished in my role. We still got the products done and so on, but it didn't have the same joy. Didn't carry with it the same resonance. Like once I had a sense that my path to my next self, my next version of self, was not going to be continuing in software. It was going to be something else. It was like weak tea.
Well, I mean, it seems like the more and more you thought about it, I mean, the minister brings you aside and tells you that. That's pretty powerful. And then it's in your head. And then it probably seems like obviously what you're doing is important to your company. It's important to shareholders making money. You're doing good work. But like, if your purpose is to serve God, like ultimately, what are you? That's got to be a tough thing.
Right, right. Remembering this was the God I didn't know that I believed in not that long before. So it's like
Yeah.
very, it wasn't a very clear, straight line. I had never thought about being a pastor ever before. I thought I might have been a second career person, that I might have go into teaching. I was an adjunct professor at Northeastern for a period of time, and I kind of enjoyed that. I wondered if I was going to go from, core application development to working in an applied field like a medical science or a biotech company, again, trying to be purposeful in my work, or being part of an IT organization for a nonprofit. No, I thought there was going to be a second chapter,
Yeah.
but there was no way I was writing that chapter, beginning with the words, and then Ian Holland became a pastor.
Yeah, it's quite the leap. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's because I have two kids with one on the way. I just keep thinking of it financially. I'm like, you're probably doing pretty well. So it's a lot of, not that that's the be all end all, but leaving a lot of cash on the table.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think my parents were confused on many fronts, I think. The first one was the fact that, okay, I was brought up a Catholic, so what did it mean to become a Protestant minister? But I
Yeah,
think they were more concerned with the fact that I had the big job in America, and how come I'm turning away from that? And further, my dad once said to me, trust you to pick a denomination that has no hierarchy and no bling.
that's awesome.
There was no ladder to climb. There was no
Yeah,
kind of metric of power or privilege or position,
yeah.
United Church of Christ, and we don't even have the fancy hats and the mitres and the staffs and the big crosses.
No accoutrement, just
No
standing
accoutrement.
up there.
That's
Yeah,
right. If you do wear a robe, it's a very plain black robe. We don't get to dress up as fancy as our colleagues in other denominations.
that's tough. Well, I mean, you could spice up the robe, I suppose. Add a little something to it, a couple sequins, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a possibility. That's a possibility. Yeah, so it was not a standard path for sure, but it's been a beautiful one.
Yeah.
It was also early on, it was tough because I was so competent in my previous role that I had to embrace a whole new set of and a whole new degree of incompetence.
That's starting any new job, but yours has a little more pressure on it, I suppose.
That's right. That's right. And a question about identity. But again, the thing that was guiding me was this idea of the glory of God as a human being fully alive. And if you're shown a path to what that life involves and you walk towards it and embrace it, then you know something deeper about yourself. And then you become to know something deeper and a deeper appreciation for the people around you. And like I said, people are weird, but they're amazing. And again, this path has allowed me to that appreciation.
People are weird, but amazing is a great summation of life and learning to just appreciate people. And I think now that I have younger children, I think about, this is kind of weird, but I think about my own mortality a lot. It really
Yeah.
questions prior to them, to be honest, I didn't really care. I didn't care about anything, you know? You're just living, like, I'm gonna die, who cares? Whatever. But now it's really every day I try to appreciate um them and who they are at they're 2 and 4 and they're well almost 4 this week. Happy birthday. And it's just like you really have to take in the moments and talk about weird but amazing people. Young children are the weirdest but most amazing and most frustrating. And I think you going in as a pastor and really the community like a church provides is like nothing else. And that's even more family there. And I think like you can't have anything more beautiful than that.
Right, right. And you move towards a way of when you can appreciate people, you can trust them, we can forgive each other. When we know that, when we appreciate their amazingness and we also understand their humanness because they're the same as us. We screw up, they screw up. There's a possibility for grace and for acceptance. And, we don't all have to get so defensive with each other if we just happen to disagree about this or that issue. But it's from that point of saying, no, each person is a beloved child of God, created in God's image. Let's go from there. Everything else is a bonus. You can just move move from that point, and it makes for a beautiful life. Yeah. So my son, around the dinner table when I was started going to seminary, when I had been working in technology, it's a very intense world. When you're trying to create huge products with huge customers, a lot's on the line all of the time. You're working with, 300, 400, 500 engineers all working on the same goal. And it takes a lot of energy to get everybody to row in the right direction, the same direction. So I was probably kind of an intense person in the home. So after I started a seminary and I did some internships in churches, around the dinner table one time, my kids said that they liked me better now.
It makes sense. So you found a truer version of yourself.
Yeah, yeah. But also, I think I began to have more time for people.
Yeah.
When we're working on a project and the system goes down and there's a really very challenging bug to find and to fix, I was very single-minded, and that made me very good at my job. But if I was so single-minded, then I didn't have a mind for my kids when they were small.
Yeah. And that's all hours of the day.
Yeah, yeah. People say, well, it must be hard working on Sundays now. But you know what? When you're working at technology, there's no such thing as Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or Saturday. There's just the day that you have to do the work.
Yeah. And the system doesn't care. It can go down at any time.
But, it was very rewarding. It was a lot of fun. It's great to be part of a successful company, a successful engineering team. And there are times when I miss it. But again, when I lost the taste for it, when it didn't feed me, emotionally, then you can't do it anymore.
Were like your colleagues there, like some of your friends there surprised? Or were they like, this makes sense? Did they see it coming?
Shocked, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
gotta, yeah.
Shocked. But then they knew that they couldn't outbid God. So
You can't,
there was no, I wasn't going to another company. There was, in some sense, it's strangeness saying, no, I have to leave to go to seminary. Um, but they wanted the best for me. And that became very clear very shortly, is that they um, wanted to do the best for me. And when I told my boss at the time, that I was leaving, I said, I don't know how this is going to work or why it's happening. But, and I didn't want to leave right then. I says, I'm probably going to enter seminary later. And he says, well, we will take advantage of you for as long as you're with us. And so we navigated transition from full-time to part-time roles and kind of made the best that we could. And they created a way for me to be like half in and half out until I was truly ready to commit and accept that this was my next role in life.
yeah. That's really good of them to do that. I wonder if it would have been the same if you were going to a competitor. Probably not. They probably would have said 2 weeks is fine. But I think the fact that you were going to do something meaningful like that, they gave you some grace, which is
Yeah,
awesome to hear.
yeah, yeah.
Can't outbid God. I like
Can't
that one.
thank God.
I think that's a perfect wrap. Do you have any closing words for the people? I really appreciate you jumping on. It was really fascinating to learn like about the journey, and great person to talk to. Obviously, as a pastor, you have plenty of experience talking. So
I do, and I'm Irish, and I've
that's
kissed
true.
a Barney Stone at least once, if not twice. So
Okay, there you go.
I have a lot of cultural advantages.
Yeah,
I would say no. It's been a beautiful path. It's been wonderful to be here in your church and with your parents and all the people who knew you when you were a troublemaker before. and that greet your kids now. And I guess it's the same. I'll give you the same encouragement that I try to follow myself is, in your work, you're taking this entrepreneurial path right now. And, if that's what feeds you, makes you alive, and you're leaning into your best self as a dad, as a spouse, as a content creator,
Yeah.
just go for it and reach for that way of being ever more fully alive. And I would say that to anybody who is watching and listening to, where we've all been made in God's image to do something really special that only we can do with the ones that we surround ourselves with our family, with our close friends, with our colleagues.
That's a great wrap. I couldn't have said it better, but that's why they pay you the big bucks.
That's right. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God. Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate it.
God bless. Bye bye.
God bless.